today's theme is 3 movies that are all personally recommended to me by my friends after they saw my giant binder of movies and stats from last year. So the name of those 3 movies are The Hustler, The Howling, and Barb Star Vista del Mar. First up is The Hustler. This is a 1961 Paul Newman film recommended to me by my future brother-in-law Chris. He recommended it to me after I talked to him about how I'm not a big fan of the movie Rounders because it really glorified gambling, but I did like the movie The Cincinnati Kid because it is still a movie that features gambling, but it doesn't really romanticize it in the same way. And so he recommended this movie, The Hustler. So going into this movie, I kind of figured that after a scene or two, I'm gonna know the entire plot to this movie. There's no way The Simpsons or some other TV show hasn't parodied this movie, and so I know this entire story by heart even without having seen this movie. Well, I was completely wrong. I had no frickin' idea what the hell was gonna happen in this movie. Every single scene was a giant surprise, and I loved it. This movie's amazing. Paul Newman plays this pool hustler, and he kind of gets obsessed with beating this really, really good pool player. And that's sort of what the movie's about, but it's more about obsession and alcoholism and also just addictive tendencies in general and how it can be the downfall of you. It's really, really, really good. It's also just hard for me to describe all the good stuff in this movie because it just really works. The cinematography is incredible. There were so many amazing shots. All the pool tricks were really, really cool. The acting was incredible. I mean, obviously Paul Newman, but all of the supporting characters as well. I particularly really loved his female co-star, Piper Laurie. Her portrayal of an alcoholic was it was like nothing I'd ever seen before in a movie, but it felt very, very true to life, and it was such a great performance. I instantly loved this movie. It's so good. I definitely recommend it just kind of in general, but I would extra specially recommend it if you're a fan of older movies or pool, but you don't need to be a fan of that stuff to enjoy this movie. It's a 61-year-old movie it's a timeless film. It's so good. I love it so much. Next up is The Howling. This is a 1981 werewolf movie recommended to me by my friend Colin. I think sarcastically, but I went ahead with it anyway because it was short and I wanted to watch a short movie. The basic premise is it's about this reporter woman who has a very creepy stalker fan who things go very bad with, and then she kind of goes away to this retreat place as a way to deal with her PTSD. In spoilers, it's actually a colony full of werewolves. I didn't like this movie. It was really boring, and that was frustrating because there's a lot of stuff I like about this movie. Really just a lot of the basic ideas of this movie are really interesting. Just a whole colony of werewolves is fascinating. The sexual serial killer being obsessed with someone who's also a werewolf. They also use werewolf as a metaphor for sexual stuff. It could just be sexual desires in general or something. It's really interesting. And I crazy loved the ending because it was just so unexpected, and it's not like anything you've seen in any other film, probably. It's just a really great final note for a slasher horror film thing. And I also really liked the final version of the werewolf, them in full werewolf mode is cool and great. I didn't care for the transformation stuff. That looked really dumb because it was more bubbling skin all over the place, and it kind of feels like it's just a cheap ripoff of An American Werewolf in London. But that movie came out the exact same year as this movie, so it can't be a cheap ripoff. Yeah, so this movie was just weird because it did give me a lot to think on, and I like that and appreciate that, and that almost makes me want to put this movie in the meh category, but I can't in good faith do that because it was just so dang boring. So yeah, so I don't recommend this movie. Maybe it's a good movie for watching while you're drinking with your buddies, but sober on your own. And lastly is Barb Star Vista del Mar. Oh yeah, this is Kristen Wiig's new movie from last year there, don't you know? So this one was recommended to me by my buddy James. He saw my list and said, and I quote, "Anyone's list is invalid unless they've seen Barb Star, go to Vista Del Mar." So I was definitely very aware of this movie, but I had zero desire to go see it. It looked just dumb. This did not look like it'd be my vibe. But James was very adamant that I should give it a try. I went to this movie trying to set myself up for success because I'm like, it's a comedy. Comedies are best when you watch it with someone else. So I watched it with one of my buddies. And then I was also under the influence of alcohol because alcohol always helps. Unfortunately, neither of those things were even remotely that helpful in this case because I did not like this movie whatsoever. I just kind of hated everything about it. I hated the whole evil scientist plot line. I hated their costumes. I hated every single thing that Kristen Wiig and her co-star did. It was, no. So in my opinion, this movie is as bad as it looks. But I will add in James's opinion because he is a big fan of this movie and his opinion is also as valid as mine is. So we were texting about this movie and I asked him, what about the movie makes you want to share it with the world? Why do you connect to it so deeply? What about it works so well for you? And James's response was, literally everything. I don't think there's a single scene I don't love. It was so unpredictably bold and confident and weird and silly and goofy, mature and adult, yet not eye-rollingly raunchy. Reminded me of Midwestern women and politeness, which I miss by living away from Wisconsin. Side note, he lives in California. The music, the singing, the energy, the comedy. It was all shimmer to me. Lol. Exactly the kind of feel-good, positive movie I needed in these dark times. LOL. I think I've seen it at least 6 or 7 times in 2021. Ha ha ha. So if it wasn't clear, James has the exact polar opposite opinion of this movie than me. He without a doubt loved it, and I definitely hated it. I tried really hard. I just could not stand this movie. So, do I recommend it? Well, obviously I don't, but James does. So, do with that as you will. Barb Star, go to Vista Del Mar. Alrighty, now for today's rankings. First up, we got The Hustler. This was a big debate for me whether it should go number 1 or number 2 because I crazy loved the Sasquatch gang and connected to it so deeply. But The Hustler is just fundamentally a much better film, so it had to go in the number 1 spot, and I'm fine with that. It's really good, it's really great. And then after that is The Howling, sitting at number 8 in the didn't like category. And then bringing up the rear, rightfully so, is Barb Star, go to Vista Del Mar, sitting at number 9 in the didn't like category. And this is out of a total of 9 old movies so far this year.